Fakespot is acquired by Mozilla. You'd think that Mozilla has an excess of funding and has covered absolutely all needs in the browser space, leading them to branch out like this, but the browser really needs a lot more hands and funding. I honestly can't make sense of this. And Fakespot. They present themselves as a company that focuses on detecting AI-generated content from human-generated content. It sounds like they've set out to play whack-a-mole against all the biggest AI companies in the world. Literally all the largest tech companies in the world are right now focused on making AI content indistinguishable from human-generated content. I can't help think that this is an infinite money sink, and in no way improves Mozilla's browser.
It sounds like they've set out to play whack-a-mole against all the biggest AI companies in the world. That's exactly what they're doing with the biggest ad trackers and browser vendors. A lot of Mozilla's side projects are stupid, and I also agree they should focus more on Firefox. But this one is pretty in line with their general mission of, we'll fight the big guys because, if we don't, nobody else will.
Mozilla is almost entirely funded by $500 million a year from Google. They are a vassal.
So was Apple once.
I wonder how things would be different if Microsoft never gave them that lifeline when they needed it.
I'm happy for them to branch out, but it is discouraging that once every 3-4 months, I run into a bug or feature I need, Google it, and I'm taken to a bug report in their tracker from 5-10 years ago that hasn't been touched.
Case in point. Network ping spikes after using geolocation that will persist until FF is closed. Bugelmozolgerd bugigi, it equals 1,711,854.
I never understood what geolocation was supposed to be within the context of a desktop browser. If a website asks for this information, and I approve, what information is transmitted that couldn't be determined server-side via GeoP?
GeoP tells you at best what city someone is in. And even then for smaller towns, we'll usually report the nearest large city, which could be quite a ways away. Not to mention it's often even just flat out wrong. VPNs and other things distort where you are. Sometimes a website might need, or at least think it needs, correct, fine-grained location information. I do suspect that most websites that ask for location information could do fine with GeoP, but that doesn't mean there isn't any use for more reliable fine-grained location data.
BSS IDs of nearby Wi-Fi networks that are compared to lists sent by mobile devices with real GPS.
But the browser really needs a lot more hands and funding. I had been using Firefox since 2002, when it was called Phoenix. I switched to a Chromium-based browser because the performance difference was noticeable enough, and I am in the browser often enough to finally throw in the towel and switch. They have a huge amount of money coming in from Google. Why is this going to acquisitions like this and not towards strengthening the development so that it remains competitive? Or are they, and I'm not aware? If it doesn't remain competitive on things like performance, standards, compliance, etc., there are very few reasons for the average user to choose Firefox over any other browser at the moment. The privacy focus is good, but there are other browsers that do the same on Chromium.
From my perspective, Mozilla is doing a better job with their browser than Google and Apple are. That's why I use it. Despite the market share, I prefer their implementation of most things compared to alternatives. Everything else is gravy. I'm not sure that the money Mozilla spends on other things would be better spent on the browser. Would it realistically close any existing gaps between their competition? Arguably, they might even be better off spending it on marketing the browser than any technical metric. I'd rather this kind of thing than marketing.
Genuinely asking, why do you think Firefox is outperforming Chrome Safari in your opinion?
This feels like a good long-term vision for Mozilla. The browser wars are basically over, and Mozilla as an organization would benefit from a longer-term vision to improve veracity on the internet. With the ability to generate content at the cost of basically zero, figuring out what's real and not real is going to be an increasingly hard challenge. Browser stats, as of February, 79.7%, Chrome 8.6%, Edge 4.8%, Firefox Mozilla 3.9%, Safari.
This feels like a good long-term vision for Mozilla. The browser wars are basically over. And why is that? Oh, because Mozilla hasn't put any energy into getting better or pulling back market share from the moment it started to bleed out to Chrome? Let's not just sit back and go, Oh well, they lost nothing they could do, shrug. They built their tech in such an obtuse and opinionated way, it's impossible to integrate anywhere else. Milked their millions selling off customer data to Google via the default search interface. Burned the money on private jets, and shockingly overpaid low-talent, low-vision executives. Burned engineering talent on a VPN service no one asked for just because it's a good money-making scam if you advertise it on the right podcasts. Made huge parts of their deep engineering teams redundant. To be perfectly honest, the only good long-term vision for Mozilla is an empty office or a landfill. Their existence under the current management doomed the internet back to the IE6 era of browser variety. Firefox the browser would be way better off if Mozilla the company didn't exist. Baffles me they have any goodwill left at all from people who care about the internet. This company will literally do anything else than work hard on their browser.
Bias disclaimer. I've worked on Chrome and Edge, opinions strictly my own. And why is that? Oh, because Mozilla hasn't put any energy into getting better, or pulling back market share from the moment it started to bleed out to Chrome. Could and should Mozilla have done better? Yes. Any energy is uncalled for, however. There was the entire quantum rewrite for significant performance boosts, around the time Chrome started getting called out for bad perf. There's containers, anti-tracker tech, and a big privacy push. There is much more they could have done, and my outsider opinion is that Mozilla the organization lost its way and focused too much money and effort on things that don't matter, but it's not like they pulled an IE6 and abandoned Firefox.
That's how it felt to me too. Stretched too thin. Yet as a small company compared to Miz or Google, I can imagine how hard it is to try to thrive, or just survive and maintaining a stable path when you're fighting big pockets. I just wish they could rebalance their allocation and focus on simple daily usability things. Just a bit more. P.S. For instance, the screenshot tool is brilliant.
To me, as a long-term FF user and Mozilla critic, it looks like spend money on everything except browser development, $5 billions. Market share down the drain. Use the market share as an argument for a lost cause, and spend money on everything except browser development. Ladybird, a browser spearheaded by one person, will expose Mozilla of what it is.
The browser wars are over because Firefox lost them by spending all the time patting themselves on the back about how much better they were than the competition, wasting their money on stupid stuff like this instead of improving their browser. Getting themselves into a deeper hole is unlikely to help, emo.
Remember Firefox OS.
It's amazing how consistently poor Safari adoption has been.
Normally, I'd say they'd better write it in the bylaws that Mozilla isn't allowed to buy any more companies, but a system for identifying fake content on the web might, unlike all the other Mozilla acquisitions, such as the thoroughly pizzled Pocket, improve the web browsing experience.
The problem with Pocket was that it was a separate brand name with a weird UX. If it had been branded as a new reading list feature native to Mozilla, I don't think it would have caused a stir. I use Vivaldi now for two reasons. One, it is better than Firefox Mobile. And two, I like the ergonomics of its bookmarks and reading list sync. Having the ability for the browser to be a suite isn't crazy.
I agree with your comment, but I'm curious what pizzled means.
I'd really love for Mozilla to focus on actually, building a web browser. There are thousands of issues Firefox needs to improve, from integrating native GNOME keyring support, to performance, to porting to Rust too. Let me PM or run Mozilla for a year. We won't buy any more companies, and we're going to focus on engineering.
I suspect Mozilla is large enough that they can do more than one thing at once. Some finance and legal people spending time on an acquisition is not the reason they haven't integrated GNOME keyring.
Firefox is behind on general web support compared to any other browser. That's not just weird apps like WebHusband, WebSerial, and WebPoo, but also CSS things. It's almost as bad as Safari, except it's broken in very different areas. There's plenty to improve. On Android, there's the whole extension mess and tons of other quality of life improvements. On desktop, Firefox could use some proper PWA support. Even Safari has that implemented well now. SpiderMonkey is still the slowest mainstream JavaScript engine out there, and Chrome's process sandboxing has some features that Firefox is yet to implement, if at all. Firefox users on GNOME on Linux are a subset of a subset of a subset. That's hardly important, but Firefox is slower than all the other browsers is. Mozilla cares more about their charity programs than they do about their browser. That's why you can't directly donate to Firefox, only to Mozilla. Maybe this acquisition is a way to add a new revenue stream, though I doubt it'll matter much because I've never seen AI detection that actually works. I hope this was a smart move, but I fear this will end up as one of those buttons everyone disables in the default toolbar, like Pocket has become. Mozilla has also fired 250 people during the pandemic, so somehow coming up with the money to buy a company feels a little jarring when dev capacity still hasn't recovered.
Firefox is slower than all the other browsers. Wow, absolutely not my experience. I use both Chrome and FF regularly on Mac and PC desktops and laptops, with vintages ranging from 2011 to 2023. There is no perceptible difference to me. Admittedly, all of my machines are relatively comfortably spec'd. Desktop-class CPUs, 16GB plus of RAM, SSDs. Perhaps the difference is more pronounced when the computing environment is more constrained. Moving from my subjective opinion to hard benchmarks, Firefox wins some and loses others. Overall, they're close. I don't use Android, so I don't know the FF situation there. It certainly sounds like a mess. I will take your word for it.
The general state of Firefox suggests that they are not large enough to do more than one thing.
This is a thing that has just become a thing to say with no substance. I use FF every day, and have since the Quantum release, and have few complaints.
It's great that everything just magically seems to work so well for you. But behind the curtains, it took additional effort from the developers of websites you visit to make it so. Same goes for Safari and some of the less popular browsers.
What state is that? I've been very satisfied with FF over the past 5 years.
Basic keyboard shortcuts that worked in the 90s don't work on Firefox Android.
Android is a touch-first OS. Keyboard shortcut support is woeful in general in most apps. 90s desktop browsers didn't work well with touchscreens. Mediocre web browsers aren't making them money though. The search partnership royalties are. If it is still making them money, why try harder? Is Firefox-centric Mozilla still relevant in 2023? No, not really. People also assume that X is a distraction to the goal of Y. But why would it be? If it hasn't happened yet, it probably isn't going to. At this point, they arguably lost the browser war. Even if they made a great browser, it is going to struggle to win meaningful market share. And even then, how many people are going to subscribe to Pocket or a VPN? Nowhere near as much as what their search royalties make them, which likely isn't going to last forever in this climate. What about if Google pulls the plug on their search partnership due to declining Firefox numbers? They're largely dependent on Google. They probably can't pay their CEO $3 million salary if that goes south.
Why do you expect this from Mozilla but not Microsoft, Google, Apple?